Today's episode of Necronomipod is brought to you by Beardology. There are a lot of imitators out there, but there's only one place I buy my beard oil. Beardology beard oil nourishes your skin and won't leave you with that greasy feel. With over 17 cents available in their extensive product line, I trust my beard to Beardology. You can find Beardology at beardology.co. Use code NECRO15 to receive 15% off your purchase. Beardology. Discover the best way to avoid the shave. Today we're going to talk about the Dyatlov Pass Incident. In the late 1950s, 9 people on a ski hiking expedition in the Soviet Union went missing. When a search team finally found their bodies, their remains featured a wide variety of injuries, ranging from hypothermia to massive chest trauma to missing eyeballs. Was this all caused by an avalanche, the Yeti, or Ian's obvious choice, a UFO? I'm Mike.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Dave. If you've ever dreamt of ski hiking in the dead of winter in the Ural Mountains when it's 20 below zero, stick around. A cautionary tale awaits you. This is Necronomipod.
Several very peculiar, bizarre things surround this event. One of which is that when the tent was recovered, they found that a hole had been slashed in the side of it, and all of the team's belongings were left inside, pretty much undisturbed, but the team were nowhere to be seen. Then, when the bodies were recovered, they were found to be wearing hardly any clothes. They were wearing sort of sleeping clothes and no shoes. So they must have dashed out of the tent, not even trying to open the door. They slashed the side open in the tent and ran out into the middle of the night. And several of them had blunt trauma, concussions, broken bones, this kind of stuff, suggesting that they'd been attacked, possibly.
Okay. So we're settling with Dyatlov.
Dyatlov.
Yeah, let me get.
It's been like a 15-minute conversation we've now spent on this, and now that we finally got it figured out, we're ready to start the podcast. Dyatlov.
Dyatlov.
Everybody listening, say it with us. Dyatlov.
Dyatlov.
There we go. Even Annalise is back to let us know how to do it. So Dyatlov Pass, Ian.
So first, I have to give a big thank you to Christy, our good friend Christy from Just Brew Coffee, for doing phonetic pronunciations of these names for me and sending over.
Because if she didn't do it, we're going to have to ask Annalise to do it, and we don't know how that would have went.
And so this is very disappointing because all week I've been looking forward to hearing Ian try to pronounce these fucking Russian names. And now that he has the correct pronunciations, it's not going to be as good.
Yeah.
We'll still laugh probably a little bit, I'm sure, as he goes through these.
If anybody heard unedited versions of this, there's a lot of words that I just get completely stuck on. So,
well, there's like 2 vowels and 97 consonants in some of these words. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, these are pretty intense. So yeah, let's get into it. In January 1959, Igor Dyatlov was an engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, and he put together a team of 9 others for a skiing expedition across the northern Urals in
Sverdlovsk Oblast?
Didn't do my research very well.
What'd you say, Dave? I thought Dave said it pretty well.
Sverdlovsk Oblast?
Yep, sounds good to me. Soviet Union.
I think Just Brew Coffee is going to pull their sponsorship after this debauchery.
Each member of the group were really experienced hikers, and they were at a level of grade 2 with ski tour experience and would be receiving a grade 3 certification once they arrived back from the trip. At that time, the grade 3 was the highest certification available in the Soviet Union. So it sounds like to me
these are experienced people.
It's like the best of the best, I guess, for survival.
Yeah, top level. So this is kind of like cross-country skiing, right? It's ski hiking.
That's how I thought about this. Yeah. You're not like necessarily downhill skiing, although I'm sure these people are probably pretty good at it, right?
Yeah, so it's like the shitty parts of skiing without the fun downhill parts.
Are these the people that wear the tennis rackets on their feet?
Yeah.
Is that what this is?
That sounds horrible.
Should we? It's snow outside. Can we just get tennis rackets and just walk? And remember a few weeks ago when you would have pushed me out of the snow pit? We should have put tennis rackets on our feet and tried. And then we could have ended up like Dyatlov
It probably would have worked out better for us than
I
what
would
we were
hope.
doing.
Or better than them at least.
Wearing a 7-year-old's pair of gloves, trying to push you out. So the goal of this expedition was to reach the Otorten Mountain, which was about 6 miles from where this incident took place. In February 1959, the route that they were taking was considered a Category 3, making it the most difficult route they could take.
So I read that Ortoten Mountain in the native language there stands for, or translates to, don't go there. So perhaps they should have studied up before they went there.
Off to a bad start from the get-go here.
Was that the Mansi tribe?
Yeah, the
named that?
Mansi, yeah, the natives. Don't go there.
It kind of seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, maybe.
The members of the team included...
Are you going to read these in a Russian accent? That might make it even more interesting.
I don't think I could do a Russian accent.
What do you mean, Ian? Please.
There you go. Maybe you should read them.
No, have at it.
You're the voice guy now, Dave. You might as well.
All right. The team consisted of Igor Dyatlov, Yeti Doroshenko, Ludmila Dubinina, Yeti...
With a lot of vowels and consonants.
Lot going on. Yeti Krivonishenko, Alexander Kovalatov. Oh, fuck. Kovalatov.
Kolevatov?
Kolevatov. Let me see. Zenyatta. Oh, man. What the fuck?
Do you want me to try reading them?
Yeah, go for it.
Where's the... We're doing okay. I just...
Nope. You can absolutely go for it.
This was as great as I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Igor Dyatlov, Yuri Doroshenko, Ludmila Dubinina, Yuri Krivnoshenko, Alexander Kolevatov, Zeneda, holy fuck, Kolohomorhuva, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Tibobrinol, Semyon Zolotaryov, Yudi Udin.
Oh,
all right.
That was outstanding. Great job, guys.
Well, I probably butchered that.
Perfect.
It's about as good as it gets for me. All right, that in itself deserves a drink.
Thank you again to Christy for helping us out there. We probably still butchered the
Oh
the
shit,
out
my
of
mic's
these.
on mute. I'm just kidding.
Motherfucker.
That was a very, very nice job, gentlemen, reading the names such a way.
I'm just gonna end up doing a Borat voice by the end of this. This is very nice. You did
I am from
good work.
Kazakhstan, and that was very nice.
I like you peoples. You'll do this, gypsy.
My sister
I will
was a
take your
top
tears.
hooker in Kazakhstan.
Nice.
So let's get into the timeline of events. January 23rd, the group took train number 43 from, Dave, you said this name,
Sverdlovsk.
to the city of Serov. January 24th, the group arrives in Serov, where Yuri Krivonoshenko was detained for soliciting and singing out loud, and then was released. And also a local drunk accused them of stealing his vodka.
Of course it's vodka.
Right.
Soliciting hookers?
No, so when I read the book Dead Mountain, this guy, he brought a guitar with him everywhere and was just having a good time singing. And that was pretty much all he was doing. And,
Maybe soliciting is like he was getting money from people?
no,
from
he was just
singing?
having a fun time singing. And the Russian police, they weren't having
Well,
the good time he was trying to have.
Wasn't the greatest place, I'm sure.
No. January 25th, the group arrived by train in Ividel and took a bus to Vizhay.
Sorry, cracking a beer over here, Ian.
January 26th, a truck takes the group to a logging community called the 41st Settlement, and it was also known as the 41st District or Quarter. When I was also reading the Dead Mountain book, it sounded like it was just like a logging place where guys just went and lived there for X amount of time just to cut down trees and shit.
I mean, we're talking about a pretty isolated place up here, up in the Ural Mountains.
Yeah.
There's not much around there.
January 27th, the group hired a sled to take them 24 kilometers to the North 2 mining settlement, which was abandoned. January 28th, Yeti Uden goes back with the sled because he got sick, and the group spent the night in the banks of the Lozova River.
Isn't he thankful?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the guy that misses the flight that crashes.
Right.
Final Destination stuff going on here.
Has he written a book or done anything?
He's,
Not to jump, you might have.
no, in the Dead Mountain book, he does, the guy that wrote that book meets up with him. And
Really?
Yeah, and it's a really good book.
But ultimately, he's the one a lot of this information comes from, because that he was able to provide kind of the,
some background.
all this
information. Yeah,
activity
he was a
before
part
all
of the
this
start of it.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
January 29th, the group, using skis, made their way from the Lozova to the Espaya River, where they could spend the night. January 30th, the group pitches a tent on the banks of the Espaya River. January 30th, the group tries to ascend the shortest way from Espaya to the Lozova River, now known as the Dyatlov Pass, and goes back to the banks of the Espaya River that night. February 1st, the group lightens their backpacks at this camp, only taking essentials, and they plan to come back and get that stuff on their way back from the trip. They started late in the day to get moving. They went 500 meters off their planned route. They ended up covering 2 kilometers and pitched their tent on the north slope of the Kholat Syakhl. February 2nd, all members of the group mysteriously die. February 12th, the group was expected to return in Vizhay. February 21st, a search party goes out looking for them. And on February 26th, their tent is found and an official investigation is launched into their disappearance.
So kind of unlike our other stories, the aftermath is going to be the main point of discussion here.
Not a whole lot to
because,
talk about with the.
you're covering all the activity up front.
Right.
So next week, folks, we're going to talk about. Thanks for joining us.
Got any shout outs today?
When their tent was found on February 26th, it was halfway torn down and covered in snow. All of the group's belongings had been left behind. And from the scene, it could be visibly seen that the group had frantically fled their camp. They found 9 sets of footprints that looked like they were wearing socks, a single shoe, or barefoot that led towards the edge of nearby woods. But after 500 meters, the tracks were covered by snow, and forensics determined that the group had frantically cut their way out from the inside of the tent.
So that's the most interesting part of the story, I think, that they cut themselves out from the inside of the tent.
Right.
In a panic.
Yeah.
Did not even have time to unzip the tent. Had to leave immediately.
My first thought reading it was like an avalanche. Like it came down, they got trapped in it, they had to cut themselves out. That was my first initial thought. I know we haven't finished the story.
Yeah, initially they thought that someone had cut from the outside, but then they had forensics come in and they did some tests and stuff, and they were able to determine that the way the knife was and like how the tent was frayed and stuff,
right,
that it came from the inside. So right away, I mean, it sounds creepy, right off the bat, that something scared the shit out of them.
This sounded creepy when you told me they wanted to go hike through this desolate mountainous area in Soviet Union in the 50s.
So slightly into the woods, searchers found the remains of a small fire and the bodies of Yeti Krivonoshenko and Yeti...
Not gonna work here anymore.
Yeti Doroshenko.
Mike, it's very disrespectful to these victims. And we're all about respect on this show.
What's that voice you've been doing for the last week now? Poor girl was 66 pounds when she died.
Annalise is not here today to defend herself.
Neither are these people.
Fuck me.
Both of them were found wearing their underwear, shirt, and no shoes. So when they say underwear, it's like
long johns.
Yeah. Their official cause of death was determined to be from hypothermia. The branches of the cedar tree that they were found under were broken up to 5 meters high, and initially they thought it was from gathering sticks to start a fire. However, when they brought in the forensics team, it was determined that large parts of skin were found in the bark of the tree, like going up, and their hands were all tore up. So it showed that they were like frantically trying to climb this tree to get away from something. And forensics also determined that someone had moved their bodies after they died to a face down position.
Which
For
is
those two.
the second creepiest part of this story.
Yeah.
Or maybe even the creepiest part of
That
the
skin on the
story.
tree still creeps me out too.
I mean, which makes sense. If you're trying to get up the tree,
Yeah.
you're going to get fragments of
I
skin
get
coming
it.
off on the branches.
It's why are they frantically climbing?
Yeah, I guess there were some spots that happen on your body, like post-mortem. It should have been on their side. It was on the front. They were on the front of them. So that's how they knew that somebody had moved them, I guess, because they should have been somewhere else on their body.
Yeah.
But instead, all these...
So is there any reasoning as to why they would have been flipped over, or just someone moving them and that's just how they threw them?
We'll get into it here. There's some thoughts on what happened, why they would have been moved. So on February 27th, searchers found the bodies of Igor Dyatlov 300 meters from the cedar tree and Zenaida Kolmogorov 630 meters from the cedar tree. And then 6 days later, on March 5th, Rustem Slobodin's body was found 480 meters from the cedar tree. Igor Dyatlov was reported as being lightly dressed, wearing no shoes. Zenaida was reported as being dressed better than the rest of the group, but not wearing shoes. Both of their deaths were determined to be caused from hypothermia. Rustem was also considered to be better dressed, and he had one boot on his right foot. His death was determined to be from hypothermia, but he had a small skull fracture and abrasions on his face and arms. The positioning, how they found their bodies, suggested that they were trying to get their way back to camp.
So I think what's important to note here is that, these guys had no shoes on. They were underdressed. They were in their underwear. So there must have been imminent danger to cause them to leave, to cut themselves out of that tent. It was negative 20 degrees outside with the wind, and you're not going to last 5-10 minutes out in those, conditions with no shoes. So
Right.
whatever happened must have been terrifying to these guys.
I don't like taking my dog out when it's 40 degrees outside, let alone running out of a tent in negative 20 plus wind chill.
With no shoes on.
With no shoes on. Negative 20.
The remaining members of the group were found on May 5th under 4 meters of snow in a ravine that was 75 meters farther into the woods from the cedar tree. There were signs that the clothing from those who died first had been taken by them for survival. So the two that were found under the cedar tree that were moved face down, it's thought that they took took clothing from them.
So could it have just been those people that moved their bodies face down?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So
Like
that's,
they
that's
moved
what you're
them.
getting at. Okay.
Yeah, they died first, so of course they're going to take the extra clothing.
Right. Because Ludmila, her body was found and her foot was wrapped in a piece of Krivonoshenko's underpants, and she was also wearing his brown sweater. So she took his clothes. And this is where it even gets weirder. His brown sweater tested positive for radiation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends on what radiation levels, right? I mean, do dental x-rays provide that kind of residual level of radiation?
From what I was reading, it was too strong to be something
strong?
that they were previous, like he didn't wear that sweater and get something on, It was too strong to be something like that.
Yeah, that's another very interesting part of the story, the radiation level.
And so, her cause of death was determined to be caused by major chest fractures. And she was also missing her tongue, eyes, parts of her lips, and some facial tissue. And a small piece of her skull was also missing.
She got fucked up.
Yeah. And I know one of the examiners said that the chest fractures would be like something you would see in a car crash.
Right, versus like blunt force trauma from a baseball bat or,
Right.
like combat, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm missing a lot of her face, though, here, too.
Yeah. Semyon was found wearing Dubinina's faux fur coat and hat.
Oh, she had a faux fur coat? It's pretty socially conscious in 1959. She's against fur in the 50s? Kudos.
She was ahead of her time.
I like it.
He had a camera around his neck and a pair of leather shoes on. His cause of death was determined to be from major chest fractures, and he was also missing his eyes.
See, this story just gets crazy and crazier.
Yeah.
It's weird as fuck.
Alexander was found he had a sweater and pants on. Both of those tested positive for radiation. His death was determined to be from hypothermia, but he had injuries to his head that left his skull exposed. Nikolai was reported as being the best dressed of the group. On his feet, he had woolen socks and boots on.
Best dressed meaning like the most covered for the weather,
Yeah.
weather appropriate, or like he had a snappy
No, I think he was snappy.
tuxedo on. And
Like
he
I think People
his dancing
Magazine.
shoes.
People Magazine was like best dressed and worst dressed of Dyatlov. He won best dressed.
Like how they always called Barney Hill a snappy dresser.
That's right. And his wife a crack whore.
Wow. Every episode, Betty Hill gets demeaned.
You guys bring them up every episode. I simply point out the facts.
Rest in peace, Betty Hill.
He had multiple fractures to the side of his skull that would have left him unable to move forward anymore. So it's
Like he wouldn't have been able to function.
Yeah. So it sounds like whatever happened, whatever hit him in the head, just he dropped and then died from hypothermia.
Yeah.
And Ian, you had mentioned that Semyon was found with a camera around his neck.
Right.
So was there any pictures taken? Was there anything to that?
Yeah, that's where it even gets a little stranger.
We'll be right back.
We like to drink beer, a lot of it. After a long night of drinking and talking crime and conspiracies, there's nothing that wakes us up and gets us ready to start the day better than Just Brew coffee. With a great selection of roast levels to choose from, you're guaranteed to find one that suits your style. Small batch roasted to highlight the unique features of each coffee bean, Just Brew coffee caters to both casual and hardcore coffee drinkers alike. Since 2010, Just Brew Coffee has worked tirelessly to perfect the roasting process and technique, which has resulted in seriously delicious, always flavorful, and never bitter tasting coffee. If you're already drinking JBC, raise your mug. If you're not, raise your standards. Check them out in social media and remember, they roast, you just brew.
Check out their new online store at youjustbrew.com and up your coffee game today.
So before we get into theories about what happened to the group, we got to hit up the controversy with Semyon's camera that was found around his neck after he died. The group's log of items showed that they had 4 cameras on them, which were all found in the tent. Yui Yudin, which was the guy that
He was the one that got sick, who didn't make the trip.
Final
Right.
destination guy who was
Yeah.
smart and went home.
He
Designated survivor, if you will.
Exactly.
he confirmed that there were 4 cameras, which means no one in the group, or at least Yudin, didn't know about this 5th camera. So the big question with that is, with all this panic going on, why would that be something that he grabbed?
Zolotaryov.
Yeah.
Why did
Why did he grab his camera?
And why did no one else know about this camera?
Right.
If all 4 cameras that they thought they brought were accounted for.
Right.
So what if when all this panic took place and they cut themselves out of the tent, what if this guy was outside of the tent, maybe taking pictures or something? Could that be why he had his camera on him?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
How was he dressed? What did we say he was dressed in? If he was going to be outside, he would have been at least prepared to be outside.
Was he one of the ones that had, appropriate clothing and wool socks and boots on? Because maybe he was not in the tent.
He had Ludmila's faux fur coat and hat on. And he had leather shoes on.
So when you say the faux fur coat, I just keep thinking of the scene in Christmas Vacation when he's trapped in the attic and he wears the wrap. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? And he's putting on the old gloves and he finds the old film footage. That's how I picture him dressed right now.
Yeah, so maybe he did have.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a plausible explanation for this,
Right.
this 5th camera. It's just kind of weird that, like today, everyone has a camera. But now,
Right.
like
It's your
this
phone.
like this Yuri guy specifically recalls how many people had a camera. It's just kind of, it's a strange thing.
Well, it seemed like they were real.
Meticulous. in
Yeah,
the
like they
planning.
really knew what they had
that
on
makes
them.
sense.
Well, and you had to because you wanted to one pack efficiently.
Right.
You didn't want too much stuff. You probably counted every single bit that you brought with you. And then, like you had mentioned earlier, they were dropping stuff off at camp before they got to like the tough part
Right.
of the trip that they were going to pick up. So that makes sense.
It does make sense.
But then what doesn't make sense is why he had a 5th camera and no one knew about.
Right. Or at least Yudin, who survived, didn't know about
Well,
it.
and he was sick though. Maybe he miscounted. Like I guess you
could have.
There's room for human error.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I don't know. Zolotaryov sounds like a time traveler to me.
Is he fuck?
East of the Rockies, time traveler. You're on.
What the fuck is his name? Now it's
Dave, no one gets that joke. No one listened to the Art Bell episode.
Yeah, the Art Bell episode, least listened to of ours. Go back and listen to the Art Bell episode if you didn't listen to it.
Yeah, that was a good
great.
one. I really enjoyed
You will hear a remote viewing experiment, Olivia Wilde giving Jason Sudeikis a Blumpkin.
John Titor.
John Titor, time traveler.
There it is. We solved this.
Maybe it was John Titor. Maybe.
Better yet, Olivia Wilde Blumpkin. It's worth the price of admission, folks.
Check it out.
So his camera had 10 frames in it. The cut edge matched the previous strip, which had 17 frames. The previous strip of 17 frames covered pictures that he had taken earlier in the trip. Both strips had no damage, but there was a small section of underdeveloped film on the 10-frame strip that had a little bit of water damage and was getting kind of stuck together in the developing tank. The most controversial aspect with the examination of the pictures that he had were that 9 frames were missing. There should have been a total of 36 frames, but the 2 strips only had a total of 27.
So like photography nerds have a boner right now with all this talks of frames and strips, and you might as well just be speaking a foreign language to me.
I mean, so I guess it depends on who ultimately developed this film and how they went about it. Right.
I mean, that gives fuel to conspiracy theory stuff right off the bat.
Which gives Necronomipod a reason to exist.
Right. But there's a lot of information out there that they weren't cataloging this stuff the best. So it could have easily...
investigation, keeping track of the evidence not very well.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think, too, they're out there doing this investigation in minus 20 weather. I mean...
and how far from civilization, too.
Right.
It's way the fuck out there.
So
absolutely. Well, plus it's the Soviet Union in the 50s, so...
Yeah.
Take that as you will.
So the 10 photos from his camera are very strange. The first picture... that it's accepted and agreed upon from people that research this, and Yui Yuden and people that are real close to the case agree that it's shows 3 of the members, the tops of their heads, with a bright light behind them.
And see, I looked at that photo and I don't see that. I don't think, and we'll post it out there for people to see.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I see in that
I'll be interested to hear people's feedback. But what's crazy is if that's what they consider the best photo, the rest just go downhill from there with trying to be able to make sense out of it.
Yeah.
They're all weird, creepy photos.
Right. They're all weird, and they're all up for debate, but they clearly show some form of a bright light.
Yeah.
So I don't know what would be making that light out there, but...
Well, this is coming from someone who knows nothing about photography or camera work, but could that not just be like the flash hitting like a snowflake?
I don't know.
It could be a UFO. It could be a setting sun. It could be
a snowflake.
Could be a snowflake.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
post a bunch of the pictures, see what people think. Maybe I'm just being a pessimist here, ruining the story.
It could be Nikita Khrushchev in the 50s ordered this to be all covered up, and the murder of these students will go unsolved.
Yeah.
Well, not if
we're going to try to dissect.
Not if we have anything to say about that today.
So yeah, let's get into.
So that's essential. That's the story. That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
And then there's from that just theories.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I mean, even today, no one knows what happened.
Right.
Actually, just this month, the Russian government reopened the case. Right. They're going to take another look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, really, it's just the timeline, their injuries, and
and then some of these pictures that are you can make kind of whatever you want out of.
Right. And then there, like I said, there's multiple theories, and we'll go over some of the popular ones, but there's a ton more than what we're going to go over. There's a ton.
I mean, and all these records end up getting locked up in the Soviet vaults.
Right.
It was a different kind of time. I mean, the records of the Russian Revolution and the royal family getting executed and stuff, those were, those records were under lock and key for 80 years.
So. Yeah.
So where you had mentioned that they're reopening the investigation, are they going to release any of that now with the investigation being open, or we really just have no clue?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
So why are these theories Why are we choosing these theories
These are the most popular.
and most widely accepted?
They're just the ones that come up the most.
Okay.
I have my own theory too that I like to put forth.
Would you like to do it now? Or
No,
do you want to wait?
I like to, let's go through the popular theories. And then,
So the first theory that that the investigation looked into was the Mansi natives. They were an indigenous native people that they kind of got the shit end of the stick from the Soviet Union. Like other natives were recognized more, but the Mansis, for whatever reason, they basically told them to fuck off. So,
yeah, I think a lot of people got the short end of the stick
Well,
from the
yeah.
Soviet Union.
Yeah. But it seemed like the Mansis got it the worst. So they were the first to be looked into because they thought maybe there was some resentment. They ran into these students and they had just had some resentment towards the Soviet Union and decided
They were an angry people.
Yeah.
So I
And rightfully
picture
so.
this like Cannibal Holocaust where these native people running around murdering and eating these people who venture into their village, but I guess it's probably not like that.
I don't believe. Did I see that movie? I don't think I've seen that movie.
If you've never seen Cannibal Holocaust, I
think
strongly
I've seen
encourage you to
Cannibal
watch
Holocaust.
it.
So the Mansi they camped near where the group had set up their camp on February 1st, the night that they died. There was a Mansi camp northeast of where the Dyatlov group pitched their tent on January 30th, and a trail led to the Mansi camp, passing 200 feet from the Dyatlov camp. So, I mean, the Mansi
That's
were
very
close.
close.
Yeah.
200 feet. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
pretty fucking close.
Yeah, you can wave.
Right. Initially, it was thought that this area was a place of sacred religious stones and pagan prayer houses to the Mansi, but that was quickly found to be untrue by the investigation. So, I mean, they thought that they could have been camping on some sacred ground and the Mansi got
Yeah.
pissed.
Right.
I don't think that's what happened here.
No.
I mean, that's a very logical explanation.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like there was.
Yeah, well, the investigation determined that there was nothing like that in the area.
You know why? Because all these people died of hypothermia.
Yeah.
You would have expected those trauma wounds to all of them if that was the case, right?
Right. Yeah, you would expect.
Well, let's say that again.
Like half the victims died from hypothermia.
Okay.
So if they were attacked by, a native tribe, I would expect to see those blunt force trauma wounds to all of the victims. Not like half of these people froze to death, and half of them had.
But didn't almost all of them have some kind of trauma to their body?
No, not necessarily.
I mean, is that
Just
did we-
three of them.
just kind of superficial trauma wounds, not. But they all died of hypothermia.
So we just went back when we went through that before. There was only three of them. The one lady, half her face was missing.
Right.
The one guy had damage to his skull that he couldn't move.
Right.
I thought there was like three other people that had
other-
head injuries. Some of them had chest trauma.
Those were those last three.
Yeah.
So that was all from the same three people.
Yeah.
Maybe I zoned out for a paragraph or two.
I mean, 5 people died of hypothermia, right? 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So that's just not consistent with
In the one
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you would assume that they would have all been attacked in some form. The big thing going against the theory of the Mansis was that no items were taken. The Mansi would have 100% taken items to use as current if they didn't take it for themselves, to use as currency to trade with other Mansi.
Makes sense.
Like those 4 cameras sitting in a tent.
They would have 100% took those
And the fifth
traded
one
them.
on Zolotarev, or what was his name? The fifth camera guy.
Yeah, Semyon.
The Zapruder guy.
Yeah,
Zapruder film.
I mean, they wouldn't have just left that camera on his neck.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
agree. Implausible.
Yeah, they took a bunch of Mansi natives into custody and questioned them, but the investigation dropped the theory on them.
Yeah.
It's poor Mansies, man.
Yeah, they
Cut off by the government, blamed for the murder of these people.
Yeah, it was like it was something like the Soviet Union allowed all these native groups to be recognized somewhere in the I don't know, like in a governmental way, But the Mansi, they just were like, you're not even being recognized. You're just gonna
second-class citizen.
you're just gonna live out in the mountains, and we're gonna forget about you.
Good thing our country never treated natives that way.
USA. USA.
So the next.
So now let's talk about what actually happened.
Is this what you believe happened?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm undecided. But
Really? Okay.
I'm searching.
All right. The next theory is an avalanche. And so obviously when you're in the mountains like this, an avalanche is a common thing to happen. The Kholat Mountain, it's not really tall and it's not really steep. So that's where people start arguing that an avalanche wouldn't
be likely.
Right.
We're basically talking about a sled riding hill here. I'm kidding, of course. You looked at me like, dude, that's not what this is.
And they pitched their tent on the side of this mountain. And if there was avalanche risk, I don't know that they would have done that, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't think. And
wasn't that kind of a slope?
yeah, in their diaries, because they all kept extensive diaries, their diaries said that there was just a thin layer of snow on the ground. Like there wasn't enough snow to just like take off and cause an avalanche.
And they were, like we said at the beginning, experts. They would be smart enough to know this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, from when I was looking into the avalanche thing, I guess it is possible that snow could shift and roll over the group. And I mean, that would cause them to panic and cut themselves out of the tent. And it would explain why it was cut from the inside. And I guess too, with avalanches, I guess another round of snow can come following behind it. So that would cause them
like an aftershock of an avalanche.
But is it enough to force you out of your tent with no shoes on?
Well, if you're getting trapped inside, if you feel like you're gonna get buried alive inside the tent, maybe they felt if they could at least get out of the tent, they can dig their way out of snow. But if you're trapped in the tent, I don't know.
You're clearly not going to last more than 20 minutes outside without shoes on.
Right.
But how long are you going to last underneath the snow, too?
I don't know.
Makes sense. If it was a light snow, it makes sense why you'd climb a tree or try to, right? I mean, if it wasn't a huge... Those two guys tried climbing up a tree to get higher. If it wasn't a huge avalanche, could they not have thought they could climb high enough?
I don't think it was an avalanche.
Yeah.
I discount this theory.
Well, they found footprints. If there was an avalanche, you would think that there would be more snow that would blow through.
That would
cover all that up.
Right.
Right. And this was 2 weeks later when they found the footprints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would think,
unless it was the Mansis coming back looking for stuff and couldn't find it.
Yeah, but the footprints that they found were visibly like somewhere barefoot, so they knew it was them. And the other thing, you would think too that any of those big injuries would have happened during the avalanche, so they wouldn't have been able to get away from that area. You know, the people that had the chest trauma would have just stayed right where they were.
Yeah, I don't think that's it.
And then the other thing, when I was reading that they, obviously they were very skilled in doing, in survival, being outside and this kind of stuff. I guess the likelihood of freezing to death is way higher than being killed by an avalanche.
Absolutely.
From what I was reading. So there's no reason why they would take off like that.
As
and
opposed
just
to
leave
just
everything.
Being crushed. If it was an avalanche, like you wouldn't leave, you'd stay put and just let the snow topple you.
Well, it seems like if it was an avalanche, everything that I read would be that it was a small avalanche, like not enough to completely crush them.
But your chances of survival would be better than running outside with no shoes on.
Right. Like that, it seemed like,
from what I read,
like the thing to do would have been just to stay and just regroup everything.
Okay. Just trying to point out some facts before we start getting to this weird stuff. The two most logical reasons now we have cast aside.
I don't believe it was an avalanche.
No. And I don't think it was the Mansi either.
No. Agree.
The Mansi 100% I feel like you could rule out.
Yeah. Agree.
100%.
Maybe so. I'm not saying I believe that one either.
So, and the next one of the most common ones you find out there when you look into this on the internet, we have Semyon's camera that shows all the strange lights.
Yep, and we'll post those photos.
And there's another picture on one of their previous cameras that show a strange light that some people think is a UFO. So there were several geologists in the area close enough to the mountains who reported seeing pulsating orbs flying in the direction of where they were camping on February 1st. Lev Ivanov, who was the head guy in charge of the investigation, supported the UFO theory shortly before he died.
Yeah, so there's corroborating UFO evidence for this scenario.
Yeah, this is a little strange.
Yeah.
Ivanov said that he was forced to remove evidence from his findings that he felt pointed towards that they had an encounter with some type of a UFO. He said that he was forced to remove that the tops of the pine trees in the area were burned in a concentrical pattern. He was forced to remove statements from the geologists about the UFO that they saw in the area and drawings of UFOs that the Mansi had made for him, which they claimed to have seen on February 1st. So
That's a lot of anecdotal evidence for UFOs operating in the area at the time.
The thing with this theory, with this Ivanov coming out and saying it, what's the sense in him saying this right before he dies? You know what I mean? I don't think he was like thinking in his head, I'm going to be an asshole and just muddy this up.
Yeah.
He was the head guy.
He was the one leading the investigation.
Yeah, he was the head guy in the investigation.
I mean, not to say it's true, but it's plausible that he recorded these accounts from people and the Soviet government had him redacted from the final report.
Yeah.
I mean, that's plausible.
Right, because when I was looking into this, the Soviet Union at this time considered any talk of UFOs to be a pseudo-religious topic.
Well, there you go, yeah.
So, yeah, they viewed it as basically like a cult religious kind of idea.
You know what else was a religious topic was Annalise.
Fuck you.
Ian, I find it interesting that of all the theories we have listed here, this was the only one where there was no opposition thoughts listed for it. I mean, just saying.
How can you refute that, though?
It all is very perfect.
There were eyewitness accounts of people seeing the orbs in the sky.
They saw lights.
Look, they said orbs. You say lights, I say orbs.
Well, they said orbs.
That's why. Yeah.
Pulsating orbs.
Pulsating
is what they
orbs.
said.
It's blinking lights. That's blinking lights. It's pulsating orbs.
Maybe they were on their way to pick up Barney and Betty Hill in New Hampshire, and they were.
But that was a little bit. What was Betty and Barney Hill?
61.
Yeah, 61.
And this is 59.
59. Maybe they're just making their way
taking
slowly
their time,
through.
sightseeing. Yeah. So okay, why would this be a UFO? What do we think? Like from like an alien or visiting mindset? Why would we think they would come to some remote, freezing cold area and I guess this is the first time, and I have no experience with studying UFOs or aliens. These people were attacked and hurt. That doesn't seem to fit in with what
I don't know that they were attacked and hurt. I'm not ready to believe that.
That lady's lips, eyes, and tongue were missing.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure of that.
You don't think that was true?
I think some of that may have been post-mortem, animal.
There was another
stuff.
Guy eye missing.
Yeah,
well, if they're all frozen, though, I mean, is there a lot of animals roaming around out here at this time that's going to do all that?
Well, from some of the arguments that I read,
we didn't hear any evidence about animal attacks.
Yeah, from what I read, there's a lot of people that are really familiar with the area that said there wouldn't be any type of animal in that area that would be a scavenger like that and do something like that.
So my question was, and it wasn't trying to debunk it, my question was, that seems very odd for a UFO to hurt people like that.
So if you...
Now, I do believe that if there was a UFO, they'd be running around scared out of their mind. They might leave the tent. But these people, some of them were hurt, had chest trauma and head trauma.
Before I answer some of those questions on the UFO thing, there's also a theory of secret missile launches in the area.
Sure.
That the Soviet Union was known for testing missiles in this area. So to go back on why a UFO would be in the area, a lot of UFO sightings happen around areas where humans are testing missiles and military stuff. Like around in the 40s, 50s, 60s, there's tons of UFO sightings around our nuclear plants. And there's some stories where they even would that some had an emergency lockdown because they thought it was the Soviet Union or somebody else scouting out our nuclear areas. So
I mean, it was a crazy time back then.
Yeah. So if you want to make the argument of why a UFO would be there, you could say because the Soviet Union was launching missiles, and it seems like whoever's in the UFOs are interested in what we're doing with military stuff. And then if you wanted to get into the eyes and tongue missing, you could look at like cattle mutilation stuff, where there's all the mysterious stuff with cows with their tongues missing and eyes missing and weird surgical stuff done to them. That's my.
But with all these tests being done and missiles and rockets,
yeah,
couldn't this just be people seeing things that the government's doing and making their own stories of it? Even in the government itself, people aren't aware of other tests and missiles and things going on in flying crafts.
Yeah, 100%. And the missile launch would explain the radiation that they had on them.
I think this one is very likely the missile launch. I think that could very well be it.
And you and I were talking off recording. Who thought of testing for radiation in this situation?
So someone brought Geiger counters with them to this operation. And why?
Right. If you're looking for lost people and you see that they've all died, most of them have died from hypothermia, why bring out a Geiger counter?
It's problematic because it was so secretive in the Soviet Union during this time, and a lot of these things are still locked up.
The height of all of the testing.
100%.
Yeah. They were
so who knows? I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah, in the midst of the Cold War. So now here's the most fun.
I believe that this is probably what happened here.
No, it's not, because you already said you have your own thought. You wanted to save to the end.
This is the end. I believe that this is probably close to what happened.
Let's get into it.
All right. So the next theory is the Yeti.
They make a dynamite koozie.
Yeah. I really want a Yeti cooler.
Expensive as shit.
Yeah, very expensive.
Real expensive.
The only evidence to support this, well, not the only evidence, because Dave's got some that I didn't include here. But one of the main things is from Thibaut Brianol's camera that shows a dark, unknown figure standing in the woods. And to me, it definitely looks a lot bigger than a person.
Absolutely, it looks like a Sasquatch.
So I just saw the photo once a little bit ago, and if you've probably seen the picture because we posted it as the teaser pic for this episode, so you've all seen it. If not, go back and check it out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I saw it briefly. It does look creepy, but it's far away. It's hard to tell how big the object is.
And I've seen, doing research that scientists have said the dimensions more match a human than a big Bigfoot or
I guess something about the arms not being long.
I don't know. Who knows though?
Why
is that picture on there?
The photo is creepy as shit.
Yeah,
it's very creepy.
I mean, it definitely didn't look like one of them in the woods.
No, not at all.
A lot bigger.
Why would they have a picture like that?
Yeah, it's very weird. But the thought is that the Yeti followed them and then attacked them on the night that they died, and that would explain these like car crash type injuries. I mean, you would think a Yeti would be able to fuck you up.
I don't think that's what happened.
But then you said that like the Mansi, it wasn't them because they weren't all attacked. They didn't all have that damage.
Yeah.
So would the Yeti only have attacked 3 of them?
Maybe.
So I think the Yeti initially scared these people in their tent.
And this is what you actually believe.
Right. So I think this is plausible that something terrified them. Everyone's in the tent. Maybe a couple people are outside taking pics like we talked about earlier. So they quickly exit the tent. They run down the slope. They make their way. It looks like they started a small fire, down at the end of the hill. We talked about someone climbing the tree in the branches. Someone climbs the tree to see if it's safe, at the tent, if they see anything at the tent, wanting to see if it's safe to return to the tent. It looks like based on the pattern where people died, 3 of them try to get back to the tent. Each of them dies of hypothermia, along the way at varying spots. Meanwhile, the 2 Yuris, they die of hypothermia right there. The 4 that are left, they take some of their clothes, which we found that they were located with later. They go deeper into the woods, probably to escape whatever was taking place, or they fall into this ravine and causes that catastrophic injury that does all the damage to their chest cavities and everything else. And then, they lose their eyes and lips and whatnot, maybe from animal mutilation later. So I think that whole part is plausible, but what caused them to initially leave the tent? So that's where I'm at. So I think the whole secondary part of this is plausible, But what causes them to cut themselves out of the tent like that?
And the other thing was those guys climbing the tree climbed apparently very rapidly, though, so that it almost it sounded like something was right there chasing them, not just to climb up to
Yeah,
check
maybe.
their tent.
I don't know that
I mean, I don't know
you
if you're
can
gonna climb
ascertain
that
that,
fast.
but maybe to see what was going on at the tent, if it was safe to go back.
But
I don't
believing
know.
all of this means you believe in a Yeti or the Yeti.
Well, I more believe the second stage of this. It's plausible that they ran down the hill. 2 of them died of hypothermia because they had no fucking shoes on, and it was negative 20. A couple of them said, all right, we're going to try to go back up. They died on their way back up. The other 4 fell into this ravine. I think it was, a 9-foot drop.
Yeah.
If there were rocks at the bottom of the ravine, they could have caused that massive trauma to their chest. I think that part's plausible, but what makes these experienced level 3 hikers run out of their tent in the middle of the night with no fucking shoes on?
To support the Yeti thing, you have that note that they found, that piece of
Additionally,
paper.
nearby,
Oh, now we're throwing extra evidence out here that I was unaware of.
so outside of that, at the tent site, they found a scrap of paper nearby, and the words written on the scrap of paper were, "From now on, we know that snowmen exist." So what does that mean? Who wrote that? What does it mean?
This is the first I've heard of this. This is new. Snowmen. Has that ever been a term for
Yeah, I mean,
That's the
abominable?
Yeti.
I guess the abominable snowman.
That's what the Yeti is, the abominable snowman, right?
yeah.
That's interesting.
So if I'm gonna go
I
with,
mean, that's a thinker. That one's new.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, I don't know if that's what caused them to run out of that tent, but I think
Why the fuck would you write that and not run out of your tent?
Well, because there's evidence that these guys in their final night were doing like a mock newspaper kind of thing that explained what they were doing for the past couple days.
yeah,
just about their experience stuff. So who knows? What they were writing.
throughout their hike, like at night or whatever, they would make up this newspaper that they were writing for fun.
So it could have been someone writing that and throwing it away.
That also sounds very likely then.
But the second part of this sounds plausible. What running down this pass into the ravine and the
But
injuries
is that part ever disputed? Like what the theory you said, Dave, about post something scaring them. I 100% agree with you.
Right.
But is that disputed by people? Kind of that theory that you laid out?
Well, I think the traumatic chest injuries and the,
But you said it.
I think it's all
someone could
disputed.
fall. Like, okay, that all makes sense.
But I think there's people that have come out and did like the height versus the fall, and
Right.
plus
It's
would
only
that cause that
plus
type
the snow to
Right.
kind of brace the
Yeah.
impact.
like
Exactly.
would that cause that bad of chest trauma?
But that's what the official story was.
Was what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. I don't know.
I don't.
If I'm gonna go with the
I'm
Yeti
a realist.
theory,
I just like facts and everything that you said and what is observed as what happened based on the report. That makes sense to me. But I this whole episode is about what started that. What made them leave their tent,
Right.
And go into weather where they knew they were probably going to die because they were smart enough to know we shouldn't be out in the cold dressed like this.
yeah.
Why did that happen?
If I'm going to go with the Yeti theory, I would say that they took a picture of it, and then at some point they wrote that on the piece of paper.
Right.
And that picture was early in the trip.
Right. It was before they died.
yeah, there's a picture. There's the
Was that the first guy who was sick still with him at that point when they
No.
took that? No,
it
it was
was
already
after.
they after left him.
They had been up on this, the main part of their
okay.
of the trek or whatever. So I think they would have taken the picture, wrote that on the piece of paper at some point, and then I could, if I'm gonna go with the Yeti thing, I could see them getting scared by it and frantically leaving the tent. I could see the 2 running and trying to climb a tree to get away from it, freaking out, and they all kind of dispersed. You could say that the other 3 fell down and that caused it, or you could even say that the Yeti actually attacked them and caused it. And then when the other ones realized like it went that way, the coast is kind of clear, tried to come back to the camp and died trying to get back.
So maybe this is me being drunk then. But how does the factor of other people going to get their clothes factor into all of that? those two guys at the campfire died early.
I think they died
And they had no
first.
attack. They had no attacks on them. So the people who were attacked by the Yeti or by a fall were still alive, got their clothes,
Yeah.
I think
and stayed around.
I think those people died first. The other 3 tried to go back to the tent, died on their way up.
Why would those two guys have died first?
Because
Was it
they had
two
the
Uis?
least amount of clothing on and no shoes.
Because they were stripped after the fact.
Not fully stripped. There was only a few items taken off.
Well,
of
those
them.
4 remaining people, I think, after they died, took their clothes.
And where were
And
those? In your theory, where were those 4 people when the other 2 had died? Weren't they all out at that point?
They took the deceased individual's clothing and retreated further back into the woods, where they fell into the ravine, which I think caused that traumatic chest and other injuries. See, another thing against this theory, though, is that the footprints leading down out of the tent down to the pass show that they were running at first, but then slowed to a walking single file pace.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you were being marched at gunpoint down the hill, single file,
Mansi's.
slowly. So that's that's one of the things against my theory.
But again, that's also probably why all of these theories pop up, because there's a little bit of evidence to support any one of
exactly
these.
right,
yeah.
And then it's up to all of us to just pick, well, I like that one the best, and here's all the reasons why.
Right.
And I like this one the best because here's all the reasons why.
It's a very strange,
What are the
brutal
odds that
story.
any of these theories we're talking about are actually the truth? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the last one we'll get into, this one comes from the book Dead Mountain. The guy that wrote that believes that this whole thing was caused by infrasound. So there's a rare weather phenomenon called the Kármán vortex street,
Which has been proven.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
yeah. And it's basically when wind blows over a mountain, and if it blows over just right, it creates this vortex, which is like a mini tornado. The vortex creates a sound called infrasound, which is proven to have negative effects on people. So the sound's too low to actually like audibly hear it, but it still affects you. And it's in tests and stuff, it causes like irrational fear. Like you're terrified because
And you don't know why.
Right, it like fucks up your head. You're like, what the fuck's happening right now? So it's thought that this vortex was produced coming over the mountain, and they just panicked. They didn't know. They were just all of a sudden like terrified,
Right.
freaked out, and took off. And once they got far enough away from the sound, they
started walking single file.
What the hell did we do? We
That
don't have
literally-
any fucking
Dave,
shoes
that
on.
plays right into what you had thought.
Yeah, and then it's thought that
But then, okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no,
You should
but
finish that
it's thought that they were just like stranded at that point, and
But once the sound stopped, you would think that these people would have been smart enough to know, okay, everything's okay. We need to get back to
Well,
the
that's what I
tent and
said.
get our
Those
stuff.
3 people I said
Only
tried to get
3
back.
of them went back. Yeah. I guess.
when I read the book, the theory was that they all had split up. Like they all
Because they just panicked and ran.
right. So the 2 tried to start the fire, and it didn't. They died.
Yeah.
The 3 that ended up falling down, right? That's 4 that fell down. Found their clothes and tried to get, because down that ravine was that river that they had previously stayed
Right.
at. So the theory is that they were heading back there to get those supplies.
Okay.
Took the clothes, fell, had the problem, and then the other 3 were trying to get back to the camp and died on the way
Right.
back.
So my only problem with this theory is that I don't think it would affect all 9 of these people in the same way.
But how do you know it did?
Well, because everyone cut out of this tent and ran,
But they all
down this
went
hill.
different ways. They all maybe had different agendas.
At the bottom of the hill, though, like what do we think it freaked them out so bad initially that they all, you know what I mean?
Well, that's
they
what I
all
think's
had the
interesting.
initial feeling.
That's what I think's interesting about this theory is what does it do to you mentally?
It just makes you
makes
completely
you
terrified.
So maybe is there levels to that?
It just seems
Terrified?
unlikely that everyone reacted in the same way. I guess it's possible. It's just
But that's the thing with this story is like every theory, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then like with this one, okay, the infrasound, it makes scientific sense. Why the fuck did they have radiation on their clothes?
There's always another piece. And infrasound is a proven thing. It's not just some made up theory.
Right.
That's a real thing.
But I guess if this was a very simple answer, then this wouldn't really be an
Well,
episode.
yeah, I know.
You know, there would be a reason to it, and we'd figure it out.
60 years later, we
That's
still don't
kinda
know
what-
what fucking happened.
You don't want to say it. Let's make it fun because 9 people died, but it's what makes this debate fun tonight.
So
Not to sound like a dick.
So Dave, you're on the Yeti theory?
I think I am. Like, I think it's plausible that all this stuff that happened after they left the tent.
I think the Yeti theory is the most fun, and that's the one I want to believe. I don't believe there's a Yeti.
I mean, I think there's a Yeti. I believe in the Yeti.
I mean, I would think it could exist.
Yeah.
I think it could,
Yeah.
but I think
I believe in Bigfoot, and I believe in the Yeti.
I always go back to, in this day and age, there would be some kind of more evidence or photo.
I've seen a photo of Bigfoot.
And I think
I don't know what you're talking about.
We posted a photo of the Yeti on our Instagram.
I'm trying to picture myself in this tent when it's negative fucking 20 degrees, and what makes me...
Were they doing drugs?
Wait, you always go back to the drugs.
Yes, because that's the most reasonable answer for any of
I
this.
guess this is 1959. It's pre-acid days. I don't know what kind of...
Oh, I don't know
drugs.
what they had.
But I'm trying to picture myself
Soviet
in this
Union in
tent.
the Cold War.
What makes me so frightened that I leave this tent without my shoes, some of these people, and go out into negative 20 degrees? I don't know.
Yeah.
The realist,
The Yeti seems plausible.
the realist in me goes back to the Mansi one.
That's
which
what you buy?
I didn't say that.
All right.
The realist in me thinks that because 200 feet away are these people. They're pissed off. They're angry. But then, like we said, they didn't steal anything. They didn't attack everybody.
Right.
But
and half the people died of hypothermia.
But could just the Mansis being close by have scared these people?
But there's pictures of them with the Mansi. Like they ran into the Mansi and were having a normal.
Yeah.
They were friendly
They shared
with
some
them.
vodka with them.
Yeah, I don't think that's it.
Yeah, they were friendly with them.
I'm just saying that's what the
Yeah.
real. I don't necessarily believe the UFO. I don't think.
Just the radiation.
The secret rocket launch, maybe.
So what do you believe?
If I have
Dave's saying Yeti.
if I have, I don't know. It's gonna seem like a cop out. I don't believe it's any one of these.
None of them.
No,
I mean,
no.
you know, the U.S. government did a lot of shitty things during the Cold War, from the Tuskegee Airmen to MK Ultra. So
Yeah.
who knows if it's the same thing over there, and they didn't stumble upon some sort of Soviet test site and they just killed all of them.
Absolutely say something like that. I think.
I don't think that's out of the question.
I don't think. I think there's something to be said about each one of these, but I don't. The pictures didn't do a lot for me, and I know like that's a big one for the UFO.
Yeah.
I think those pictures are just really shitty photos that don't show us a thing.
So I have an alternate theory. So I have this theory where these hikers worked at a summer camp and a little boy named Ivan drowned because they were all busy fucking, and Ivan's mom came back and killed all of them as revenge.
That's Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's right. That is Friday the 13th. Never
I
mind.
didn't get that because I don't think I've seen Friday the 13th. Shit.
Sorry, I got confused.
The Russian Friday the 13th.
Not Jason, Ivan.
Fuck. Is that's the plot?
That's the plot of Friday the 13th.
I've not seen it.
You've never
What?
You've never seen Friday the 13th?
I just only the Halloweens, man.
Oh man.
All right, never mind. That's not a real theory.
As soon as you said real theory, Ian looks at me and goes, "This isn't good." This isn't good.
Ooh, I drank a lot tonight. It's a good show.
So it's
So what do I look up? Like Russian Friday the 13th to watch that one?
I would be scared to look up something like that. So years ago when I first heard about this, I thought it was UFOs. Then last year when I read Dead Mountain, I was sold on the infrasound theory. And then when I started looking into this again, doing the outline, then I was back to the UFO thing. I'm like, why would the head investigator, the Ivanov, why would he come out and say this shit right before he died?
Yeah. Yeah.
And why were there burns all over the tops of the trees in the area? I mean, you could say the rocket launch thing.
But does anyone else actually have proof of the burns at the top of the trees? Or was that just him saying that?
That was what he
said there's evidence of that's locked away.
Right.
Where does the radiation come from, though?
That's what I mean. That's why I either believe the UFO theory or the rocket launch theory. Because the rocket launch would explain the burns, too.
If I have to pick one of these, I'd pick the rocket launch. Theory is mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's still...
The Yeti is I want to believe that, but until there's actual evidence or proof.
And the radiation thing's a wild card in here. I don't know where the radiation comes
from. That's a really weird twist in this story.
Yeah,
that's what brings me back to the UFO or the rocket launch theory. Still doesn't explain why their eyes and stuff are missing if it's true that there's no animals in the area. But
yeah, but what place has no animals that feast?
Yeah,
but why would it only eat a few bits of them, not all of them, and only a few of them?
It's true. That's why this story's so odd and it's never been solved.
I mean, who just eats like the eyeballs and the tongue?
It's true.
Yeah.
The first thing well, I don't know what the fucking animal's gonna bite.
You know
what's
another weird postscript to this story that I read, or that I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos on this, is that the one girl they tested to see if she was sexually active after this, to kind of rule out like infighting with the males to determine the relationship. That's kind of weird. Like they hymen check on this girl.
Yeah, that's strange.
Because there was just the one chick, right?
Well, there's two. But one was a very pretty girl.
All these names,
videos.
all these names ran together to me. I don't know what was what.
So they hymen checked this girl to make sure none of the other hikers were banging her.
But that doesn't. They would get jealous and then just take off.
Right.
Yeah, they're all going to leave the tent because of it.
I know that there was another theory too.
Well, and just because she had how do you do that? Just a lack of hymen doesn't mean she was banging these fucking clowns, right?
Well, it's 1959, Dave. We don't know.
It's just, and some girls don't even have a hymen, so
this is the
very
true
strange
story.
thing.
This is the true story of 9 strangers living in a tent in the Soviet Union. Real world, Russia.
Yeah, I don't know. I think UFO or rocket launch. But the Yeti thing is super interesting, especially with that picture. Maybe the Yeti has radiation on him. Who the fuck knows?
Again, I think the secondary part of this is plausible. But what scared these people so much to get out of their tent like that?
I agree with you on the secondary part. Yeah. Like that's all sounds very plausible to me. Something scared them enough to all piece the fuck out of that tent.
Right. Everything else that happened, I think, can be explained. But what would make these experienced, whatever, they level 2, level 3 hikers?
They were trying to be level 3. They
in negative 20 fucking degree weather with no clothes on. It's crazy.
I think it's
So your final answer was the UFO
or the rocket launch.
One or the rocket launch. Yeah. You're the Yeti. If you had to pick from this, or your Friday the 13th Russia.
I don't know.
I would go rocket launch if I have to pick one of these. But like I said, I think it's something else. Starting the Soviet Union, just the government went in and just killed these people.
Maybe
they saw something. They saw something they shouldn't have seen.
Yeah, maybe,
and that was it.
I think that's 100% possible, especially with the walking, single file down.
But
footprints suggest that they could have been at gunpoint being led down the hill.
But then
again, 5 of them died of hypothermia, so that doesn't make sense either.
Well, you could have just hurt them enough that they laid there.
But they didn't have any other injuries on them, except for the one had a tiny skull fracture.
Right. That wouldn't have killed them. It's all very strange.
But that we know of. We don't know what evidence is missing.
Yeah, that's true too.
And then I don't know about who was it, Ivanov? What was
the investigator?
The investigator, yeah. I don't know. I mean, was he in the government pocket at that point? Just told to say UFOs, throw them off?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It's a very strange story.
But you think they forced him to say UFOs before he died?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't trust this fucking government.
I think it's up to everybody on Instagram and stuff to
I
weigh
wonder,
in at this point.
should this be our first Twitter poll where I put up these theories? Maybe like I think you can do 4. I'll put up 3 of these theories. So what do you want to do? Yeti, UFO, and rocket.
Soviet Union government.
And government cover up.
So Yeti, I'm making notes as we talk here. Yeti.
What if Fleischmann possessed one of these guys and he killed everyone else?
If what?
What if Fleischmann, the priest from Germany from the 1600s, possessed one of these hikers and he killed all of them?
You're using the possession of a young girl as a joke. Hope you feel okay about that.
It's not a joke. I'm being completely serious. If Fleischmann could have traveled from Germany to the Soviet Union and possessed the hikers,
So here's
one of the hikers to kill the other hikers.
We'll consider that the other category. So here's what we'll do.
Kill them all.
Later this week, we'll put up a poll on Twitter. Be our first poll we ever did. We'll see how the feedback goes. We'll give you 4 topics, 4 theories: Yeti, cover up by the government, UFO, or other.
Which would be Fleischmann.
Which could be Fleischmann. It could be anything. Other could be anything. If you think it's not one of those 3, click other. But if you click other, send us tweet us or Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and let us know what you think it might be.
And
we'll see how this poll goes. We'll see if people actually give a shit about polls.
I like the Ivan theory.
Yeah, what if it was Ivan's mom that came back and killed the summer camp counselors?
Other.
Because they were all fucking
guys,
and Ivan was drowning in Camp Crystal Camp.
I think Twitter gives you 4 fucking options, okay? I can't put all of these. We'll
Camp
put that,
Crystal Oblast.
We'll put that in
the Soviet
other.
Union.
All right. So, Ian, anything else with Dyatlov Pass Incident?
Nope.
Nothing we didn't touch on?
No, I'm as confused as I was earlier in the week.
Else, probably. And I also appreciated the fact that you said the Dyatlov Pass, the Dyatlov name, every different way possible as we went through this story. You managed to say Dyatlov, I think all of the above.
Christy tried to help me, but I think I failed.
Hopefully we keep her sponsorship with Just Brew Coffee.
Oh, she's Ukrainian, not Russian. What does she know?
Oh, boy. I'll leave that one on you. Dave, you got anything else for this episode?
No, it was a crazy story. It's why I believe it's still unexplained to this day.
This one was fun.
I don't think we'll ever know what happened here.
No.
It's fun talking about it, though. And
Much
postulating as to, what took place.
So, all right. Well, first of all, anybody who's going to judge me for not seeing, Friday the 13th, whatever, I don't care.
I'm going to judge you for not knowing even what to say Friday the 13th. So,
no, Friday the I would not have known the plot of that movie. I'm sorry. I'm a Halloween guy. There's
fucking ridiculous.
Much like there's a line in the sand and you're either a Lethal Weapon guy or a Die Hard guy, and you must pick one. I am a Halloween guy over a Friday the 13th and over a Freddy Krueger. And that's it. I am loyal to my one side, and I don't give a shit about the rest. That's my story.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm a Die Hard guy. I know you've never even seen Die Hard.
I won't watch it because I'm a Lethal Weapon
ridiculous.
guy. I'm a Lethal Weapon fan. I'm not going to cheat on it with Die Hard. That's. I'm sorry. That's a whole other episode we can argue about one day. All right, Ian, I think we got some shout outs this week.
Yeah, so I want to say first thank you to everybody. We had our best download day ever the other day, and just being a little over a month into it. The downloads are awesome, yeah. But I want to give a shout out for Instagram people to Davis VR, Macy L. Bry, Brittany Lee 9, and then for Twitter, Womb Raider 23.
I'm going to interject right there real quick
and
thank Brittany. She sided with me on last week's debate as to whether or not Annalise's parents should have been in trouble. She agreed that given the situation at that time, they should not have. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for listening.
Brittany, you're wrong. And iTunes, Yum Lou and Flawless KB gave us awesome 5-star reviews. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome.
I had just one. I know Possessed Annalise wanted to give a shout out to Dakota Shaver. Dakota, fuck me, fuck me.
Big fan. I think Annalise might be bigger than this podcast at this point. Thank you to everybody who has reached out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, leaving your ratings and reviews on iTunes. We passed, as of yesterday, 10,000 downloads, and we have only been around for 2 months. It is fucking incredible how much you guys have supported us since we started. We would have never guessed that people would want to listen to three dudes drink beer and talk about this shit, but we are very appreciative. Twitter and Instagram at Necronomipod, Facebook.com/Necronomipod. Please hit us up. Send us your thoughts.
You guys ready for a cool down beer?
Cheers.
Let's go.